Hello everyone. Today's lesson is going to be on how to write equations in slope-intercept form. We're on 4.6 here, and what you already have done is that you've already graphed equations in slope-intercept form. Today we're going to practice writing them. So we're going to look at a graph like these here, the graph of a line, and we're going to try to write an equation from that graph. So it's kind of working backwards as to what you've already done. So you'll have a little bit of taste of this. I'm going to give you a few reminders and we'll be on our way. Our learning target today is I can explain how to write equations of lines in slope-intercept form. So let's start off with that reminder. What is slope-intercept form? Slope-intercept form, the equation is y equals, I want to do that in a different color. Let's do orange. Y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Okay, so really the only two things that you need to do is to find the slope and find the y-intercept of your lines, and then you can write an equation pretty easily from that. So that's what we're going to do for this first example. It says, write an equation of the line in slope-intercept form. And to do that, I would star this or highlight this. The two things you need to do are to find the slope. Oh, sorry, my writing pad's a little crooked here. Let's straighten that out so I don't write in such a... Find the slope and the y-intercept, just like up here. Those are the two things that you're going to need to do to write an equation in slope-intercept form. So first, let's find the slope. Remember, the slope is the steepness of a line. It's how steep this line is. The other way that you can think about that algebraically is it's the change in your y points, so y2 minus y1, over the change in your x points, x2 minus x1. Right? It's the change in y over the change in x, or some people like to think about it as rise over run. These are all the same, right? I can write it this way. Change in y over change in x. This delta sign means change. Okay, so let's do that. Let's start by finding the slope or the steepness of this line. Change in y, well, thankfully for us here, you can see that they've already added in. Our change in our vertical steepness of this line is -3. It's in the red there, right here. And the change in our x is 2 over, or +2 to the right. So our slope is -3/2. Same thing as if I were to write my negative sign out in front like this. And you can do that any way. You can start here and you can say that you're going down 3. 1, 2, 3. So that would be down 3. And to the right 2, 1, 2. You can see both of those points are on this line. Okay, to the right 2 would be +2. Maybe you wanted to start here at your 2, 2. You could start at this point, and you could say I'm going up 3, 1, 2, 3. So my change in y is +3, and my change in x is left 2, so -2. Well, that's the same thing as what we just got. It's a negative line because it decreases from left to right. Especially, right, your positive slopes are increasing left to right. Your negatives are decreasing left to right. So we have -3/2 for the slope. Then you also need to find the y-intercept. So remember, your y-intercept is wherever your line crosses the y-axis. And thankfully, that's pretty easy to see here. Our line crosses the y-axis right there at 0, 5. So the y-intercept is 5. Okay, we found our slope. We found our y-intercept, excuse me. Now we just need to write it in slope-intercept form. Let me give myself a little bit more room here. So sometimes what I like to do is I like to start off with y equals, and then I'll leave a blank, times x plus, and I'll leave another blank. What goes here? Well, that's my slope, and I found it was -3/2. And what goes here is my y-intercept, and I found that my line crosses at 5. So the equation for this line would be y equals -3/2 x plus 5. Okay, so there you have it. Hopefully a good amount of this is decent review for you. Let's do another one. I'm going to start off with my equation right away. Y equals something times x. That's going to be my slope. I have to find that yet. Plus whatever my y-intercept is. Some people like to start with the y-intercept, actually. So they like to say, I'm going to find that first. So where does my blue line here cross this y-axis? Well, it crosses at -3. Okay. I'm going to put a parentheses around that just so I have my adding and my negative sign kind of separated so it's a little bit more clear to see. And then I just need to find my slope. What is my rise over my run? Well, if I start at this point, I could go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, same as they got here. And that's going up, so that's positive. I'm going over 1, 2, 3, over 3. So up 5 over 3, I can write that as 5/3. So this could be your equation right here. Or reminder, you could also write it like this. Y equals 5/3 x, and adding a negative is the same as subtracting 3. So that could be a possibility as well. Please let me know if you have any questions on those. Why don't you try out a few right now? Please pause the video to try 1 and 2 on your own. All right. So y equals mx plus b. Looks like my line goes through the y-axis at 2, so I'll be adding 2 to the end. And then what is my slope? It looks like I'm going up 1, 2, to the right 1. So 2 over 1 is the same thing as 2. So 2x plus 2. And I'll do the same for number 2. Y equals mx plus b. Looks like my line goes through the y-axis at -1. And what is my slope? Well, I can see it's decreasing from left to right, so I know it's going to be negative. And then I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4. Going down 4, going to the right 1, 2, 3. So down 4, right 3 would give me -4/3 x plus -1, or I can write that as -4/3 x minus 1. Adding a negative is the same as subtracting. Please let me know if you'd like any help on those two. Example 2 is a multiple choice, and it asks which equation is shown in the graph. And for these, it's a good reminder that whenever you have something like y equals and then a number, that's actually a horizontal line. So in this case, when it just has a line right here, you'll notice that our slope, if this were a roof, it would be a flat roof. There is no slope. There is no steepness to this. So that's why there is no x value. Right? If we were to put into our equation y equals mx plus b, well, is there a slope? No, we don't go up at all. So there's no slope. It would be 0x. Well, 0 times anything is just 0. So you don't need anything. And then your y-intercept, where does this line go through the y-axis? Well, it goes through at -4. So all I'd have to do is enter -4 into this equation. So y equals, not putting anything in there, plus b. Well, my y-axis is -4. So letter A would be the correct choice. Y equals -4 is a horizontal line at -4, like so. Okay. Now, another way another example that you might see is you might see an example where it says something like x equals 2. All right. Well, how is that different from this? Well, now it's not y equals a number, it's x equals a number. That's actually a vertical line at x equals 2. So I'd go to where x is equal to 2 right here, and then it would be a vertical line like that. That is the graph of x equals 2. So I know that's a little bit confusing because when you think of the x-axis, you think about this horizontal axis. But when you have an equation that's x equals a number, you go to where that number is on the x-axis, and then it's actually a vertical line. Okay. If it's y equals a number, it's a horizontal line at wherever that number is. Okay. So I might write down those few reminders, and it's just because they can be a little bit confusing and it's easy to forget. Okay, let's look at the last example and then a couple on your own, and then we'll be done. It says the graph shows the distance remaining to complete a tunnel. All right, it says engineers used tunnel boring machines like the ones shown above to dig an extension into the Metro Gold Line in Los Angeles. The new tunnels are 1.7 miles long and 21 feet wide. Wow, that's a big tunnel, 21 feet wide. Think of like your wingspan is like probably close to 5 feet. So, if you're standing with your arms wide out, that's like 4 of you with your arms wide out. That's how wide that tunnel is. That's a pretty big machine. It says write an equation that represents the distance y in feet. So you can see here on the y-axis, that's the distance in feet, remaining after X months. So you can see that this tunnel digging process took a certain amount of months, and that's on the x-axis. So how much time did it take to complete the tunnel? All right, so here's our graph, and it looks like what it wants us to do is write an equation for letter A. Okay, so just like before, we need to find the slope and the y-intercept. So what is our slope? How many do we go up? How many do we go over from one point to the next? All right, if I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go up one line. How much does that one line represent? Well, that represents from 1,500 to 2,000, that represents 500. So it looks like I'm going by 500. So 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. So it looks like I'm going up 2,000, and then I'm going to the left, so I know that's going to be negative, and I'm going by ones on my x-axis. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going left 4. So I have a positive and a negative. I know I'm going to have a negative slope, right? A positive divided by a negative is a negative. And then can I simplify 2,000 divided by 4? How many times does 4 go into 2,000? Well, definitely. If you were to take 20 divided by 4, you would get 5. And 20 divided by 4, you get 5. And then we still have 2 zeros that we'd have to add on to that. So we actually get negative 500 for our slope. Same thing as negative 500 over 1. Okay. And then we need to find out what our y-intercept is. Well, where does this line cross the y-axis? Well, it's right here. It's at 3,500. So y equals my slope, negative 500x, plus 3,500, my y-intercept. Okay, and that is the equation in slope-intercept form for letter A. Letter B says, how much time does it take to complete the tunnel? Well, if you just look at this line here, you can tell that at 0 months, we haven't gone any far, right? We haven't started yet. After 1 month, you can tell we've gone 500 feet down. That's how far we've dug, right? And that's represented with our slope. Each month, so per month, we go down 500 feet. So 2 months go by, we're down another 500 feet. 3 months go by. Once we get to 7 months, what's our distance remaining? Well, now we're at 0. So you can kind of tell, envision this line as you're digging down. 7 months go by, and now we're at 0 remaining feet to dig. Okay, so there you have it. The tunnel is complete when the distance remaining is 0 feet, and that's 7 months that it takes. Okay. Now, if you wanted to, you could write an equation to think about this, right? You could say, well, when our distance y is 0, so you could substitute in 0 for this equation, and you could solve for x, because we're trying to find how many months it takes. We're trying to find x, right? So to solve this equation, you could subtract 3,500 on each side, and then you'd be left with, I'm going to make my work over here, negative 3,500 equals negative 500x. If you divide each side by negative 500 to get x all alone, how many times does 5 go into 35? Well, that'd be 7. My zeros will cancel, and a negative by negative is a positive. So you can see I got the same exact thing when I substituted in 0 for y, if I were to look at that problem a little bit more algebraically than just by looking at the graph here. Alrighty. Lastly, please pause the video for numbers 3 and 4 on your own. Okay, number 3 said, write an equation of the line that passes through 0, 5, and 4, 5. All right, so remember, some people might be thinking, okay, do I have to graph this? Well, technically not. All you have to do is find the slope and the y-intercept. Well, the slope, remember, you can think of that as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, that's not too hard. This point will be x1, y1, and this point will be x2, y2. What is y2 minus y1? What's 5 minus 5? Well, that's 0 over x2 minus x1. 4 minus 0 is 4. So what is 0 divided by anything? Well, 0. So you might be saying, well, what's going on here? Why is my slope 0? Remember in the previous problem, or 2 problems ago, when we have a slope of 0, we have a horizontal line, or like a flat roof, right? There's no slope. And then I just need to find my y-intercept. Well, my y-intercept is wherever x is equal to 0. My y value is my y-intercept. Right? If I were to graph this, envision this graph right here, the point 0, 5 would mean I'm over 0 up 5. Right there. The point 4, 5 would mean I'm over 4 up 5. Well, what do we have? We have a straight line right there. And where does my line intercept the y-axis? Well, at 0, 5. So my equation would be y equals 5. Again, there's no x in here because there's no slope. My slope I found was 0. It's a flat horizontal line. So I just drew this graph so you could envision it a little bit. but here's the equation for number 3. Number 4 says, what if in example 3 the points are 0, 3,500 and 5, 1,500? So you just come over here and plot that point right here. It would make this slope a little bit different. It would say, how long does it take to complete the tunnel? If you did that problem correctly, it'll take a little bit longer. You'd come up with 8 3/4 of a month. Okay. Again, to solve that, if I were you, I would just solve it algebraically, kind of like I did here. Your slope will be different, right? But your y-intercept will be the same, and then plug in 0 for your y, and then solve, and you'll get 8 3/4. All right, please let me know if you have questions on any of this. Like I said in the beginning, it's kind of like the reverse of what we did a couple sections ago, where now we're going to write these equations in slope-intercept form rather than graph them. All righty, you guys take care. I'll see you next time.